Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning. Welcome to Racing Across America on this day after, Sunday morning, day after the Triple Crown for 2022 wrapped up with the Belmont Stakes yesterday. And we'll recap some of that action, certainly, and some of the stakes from the couple of days before as well, Belmont Stakes week. Belmont Stakes Day handle approached $100 million. It was down 2.4% from 2021. Not shocking with the field size that the handle dipped a little bit. That is what creates handle. I mean, you get big fields, you get big handle, because it's Jeremy Plonk mentioned it yesterday. It's just math with the number of different combinations and exactas and the horizontal bets and whatnot. It completely makes sense. The crowd was listed as 46,301. It was the lowest in a non-COVID year since 2010. But I think, we're not totally out of COVID, and I think, I don't know whether this year's, Belmont itself was inspiring people. Now, if you're a racing fan, you wanted to see that undercard, and we'll see some of those races here. But to me, it wasn't shocking that it was a crowd of only 40. They were capping it at 50,000. It didn't surprise me that they didn't necessarily get to that. I think, we're still kind of working our way out of COVID. And again, the Belmont itself this year wasn't. It was an interesting race. It wasn't compelling necessarily to the everyday kind of a fan. And so 40,000 in the 40s was probably about right for yesterday. Why don't we jump in? Well, a little bit later on, we'll be joined by Mike MacAdam, the horse racing writer, horse racing columnist, sports columnist, actually, for the Daily Gazette. But he was down at Belmont, and so I reached out to him to get a little kind of boots on the ground thoughts for yesterday. And so, again, we'll talk to him towards the end of the program. But in the meantime, as I say, I'm going to go over some of the stakes races. We'll save some of the major ones for when we talk to Mike, although I did want to kick things off talking about the Belmont Stakes itself. And so we will kick off with the Belmont. I like Creative Minister. I like the 5-horse. I thought it was a race where nobody was jumping off the page, and Creative Minister had the look of a horse that was maybe coming in the right direction. Had the optional claiming win on Derby Day at Churchill, and they followed that up with a third in the Preakness. And he was third behind Early Voting and Epicenter, who you would have to think are sitting near the top of the class, at or near the top of the class so far. So I thought Creative Minister was a little bit interesting. I had Mo Donegal right underneath. Then I put We the People in, and Nest. But I was skeptical of my own opinion over the past week and a half, so I was interested to see what Rich Strike would do. Rich Strike, the number 4 horse, is going to immediately kind of go to the back of the pack and be up against it a little bit. Nest was right next to him, as you can see there, and also went to the back of the pack, but she sneaks up the rail here. She got off a step slowly, however, but Jose Ortiz, again, kind of makes the most of the situation, and after kind of a step slow braking, you can see Nest is right up there, so that was a nice move by Ortiz. Sonny Leone, on the other hand, was okay sitting towards the back of the pack, I guess, although I don't know whether that's where they wanted to be. That's kind of his style, but they were saying they wanted to be up a little closer maybe. After the race, Eric Reed was interviewed, and he said, and if you watch the overhead, he said, we decided to take the horse off the rail, but you could see he didn't like being off the rail. But if you watch the overhead, it was pretty much on the rail for much of the way. It was only when he had to make a move that they started to look towards the outside. But Rich Strike just never did fire, and he winds up running sixth in the field of 8. And so I feel like my original opinion was validated on him. I thought the Derby was completely fluky. I said after the race, I don't see this horse winning another major race. But as I say, the last week and a half, I became more skeptical because he was working well and seemed to take the Belmont well. But you can see he's still a Derby winner, still sitting at the back of the pack, and he's only going to get past a couple of horses later on to finish sixth in the field of 8. In the meantime, Mo Donegal, the number 6 horse, is going to make a move to get to the lead with Irod Ortiz. He will win by 3 lengths. He will be followed by his barnmate Nest under brother Jose Ortiz. They'll run 1-2. Skippy Longstocking gets up for 3rd. We the People, who was the morning line favorite, winds up 4th. Mo Donegal eventually went off as the favorite, so the betting public tabbed it. And you can see here the Pletcher runners, the Pletcher Rapoli runners will wind up 1-2. And a pretty easy 1-2. 3 lengths first to second, 3 1/4 second to third. At 5-2, Mo Donegal, $7.20. Nest went off at 5-1. You wound up with the Pletcher duo paying a little over $27 for the exacta, and you can see there, and he got a little emotional coming back. Talked about it in the winner's circle, riding for these guys and winding up on Mo Donegal. It always pays to look back, not to redboard, but to look back and learn. And if you look back, you could kind of make the case that maybe legitimately these two had better resumes than the others. I mean, Mo Donegal as the Wood Memorial winner came into the Derby and ran okay in the Derby, but again, won the Wood Memorial over early voting, who went on to win the Preakness, came out of the Pletcher barn, and with that Wood Memorial, as I say, he kind of stamped himself as a player in the class. And Ness, second in the Kentucky Oaks, but she had won the Ashland in fine fashion. Most of the others in here, well, except obviously Rich Strike with the Kentucky Derby, but as I say, that seemed awfully fluky. But most of the others in here, like a We the People, are up-and-comers who had yet to kind of be proven amongst the top quality. Mo Donegal, Nest, grade 1s already, and kind of important grade 1s with the Ashland and the Wood Memorial. And so, I'm not trying to redboard and say, so it was just that easy, but it's always useful to go back and look and kind of decide, you know what, maybe they were the classiest of the bunch if you looked at the resumes and kind of validated that on Saturday. Mike Rapoli, very emotional afterwards, and he said, being a New York guy, this was the race on his radar that he always wanted to win, and not only does he win, he runs 1-2. Jerry Crawford and Donegal Racing also in the winner's circle, and thanking his connections and talking about his partnership over the years. So they get it done with Mo Donegal. I'm not going to remember the exact, I think it's the last 4 years maybe. Randy Moss on NBC said first time in history that there's been, I think it's 4 straight years with different winners in each of the legs. I don't know what that says exactly, but it was kind of interesting. And obviously the COVID year, you almost have to put a huge asterisk by that and pull that kind of out of the history of the Triple Crown. But Mo Donegal gets it done. Final time 2:28 and change, and kind of a legit time. Certainly, he winds up with a solid 98 buyer for the victory, and that is a lifetime best for Mo Donegal by a couple of points. So nice. Again, a nice, fun, kind of interesting edition of the Belmont Stakes to wrap up the Triple Crown this year. That also wrapped up an All Stakes Pick 5 and All Stakes Pick 6. On the day with some of the short fields, I thought, well, let's take advantage of some of the short fields. And I put together literally an $8 Pick 6 ticket. I had 3 singles, and I was too deep in 3 races. And I like a lot of people, I'm sure, Tribhuvan was the one that got by me. But if you used Tribhuvan and wound up with the other five that were pretty logical. I mean, I wound up, it was an $8 ticket. I got $40 back for the consolation 5 out of 6, so I made a little money on it. But the actual payout for all six, $4,200, over $4,200. So again, there was some value on the day. You had to find Tribhuvan, but people were kind of complaining, short fields, and where do we find the value? Again, with a logical sequence, except for Tribhuvan. But arguably that was the race where you had to spread a little bit. That one and the Casa Creed race, perhaps. I mean, I had Casa Creed on top, but you could have made the case that was a race where maybe you could have spread too. But the others had logical results. The pick five that ended with Mo Donegal and the Belmont, also you had to get Tribhuvan, but you wound up with over $1,100 there. So again, the multi-race wagers had some value in them. Had you found Tribhuvan, and how do you find Tribhuvan? That's Chad Brown. and I have said this any number of times with these turf stakes races. And in fact, we will take a look here at the Manhattan and see the win from Tribhuvan. It's going to be 7, 4, and 2. And you can see Tribhuvan with Manny Franco just kind of lulled them to sleep, opened up on the turn. I mean, a great ride by Manny, but it was one of those where, what are the rest of these guys thinking? You're looking at the fractions, 24, 49, 113. Tribhuvan is a front runner from Chad Brown. And as they go into the turn, Manny opens up, and the rest of these guys, I'm not quite sure what they were thinking with those fractions to not immediately kind of try to get on the engine and get after them, but they let them open up, and then they just couldn't reel them in at 19-1. But as I was going to say earlier, I've said it to myself a bunch of times. I didn't follow my own advice yesterday, but in these races, you kind of got to box up the Chad horses, particularly if you're looking up at the board and you're seeing prices like this, because you had Tribhuvan at $40 and change, and at Hamo at 4-1 completes the exact. It's Chad Brown over Chad Brown, and you wound up for $1. It was $94, a nice exacta, and that's one where it is as easy as kind of 1, 2, 3. It's not always going to win, but it seems like you can do okay if you box up these Chad horses in the turf stakes races. And yesterday was a nice example of that with Tribhuvan getting it done. I used Gufo. Gufo winds up third in there, 2-1. But again, it was running late. It was just too late. He goes off with this 2-1 favorite, Gufo. And again, just got rolling a little bit too late in there. Santine, I thought, also interesting. He winds up sixth. Again, everybody got kind of lulled to sleep. And it's frustrating, but I applaud Manny Franco. I mean, a clever ride where he kind of says, okay, I'm going to open it up. If you guys are going to let me walk the dog on the lead here and not come after me, that's to my advantage. I'm going. So, and on the turn, he said so long and held him off late as they were all coming too late. All right, let's take a look. Also, I mentioned it a moment ago. Take a look at the Jaipur and the Casa Creed race. As I said, this is another one where you could have made the case to go deep in here. I like Casa Creed, the defending champ in the Jaipur, had gone over and tried Saudi Arabia and tried Dubai, ran okay in Saudi Arabia, maybe a little bit disappointing in Dubai, but you always wondered how they're going to come back from that. He had been working nicely, and again, being the defending champ, I always like to root for Lee Heinseidler and his horses, and Casa Creed, it has to be the best he's had. Certainly among, but had earned well over $1 million prior to yesterday, and the 6-year-old Casa Creed came back. And this is a nice stretch run. Luis Saez, Casa Creed is in the pink silk, so you can see there on the hedge. The the easy to spot Lee Einsiedler Silks, and Luis Saez is going to not really have any place to go, and it's going to tip him out a little bit, which means loses a little bit of forward momentum, but it's not going to make a difference, as he's going to go by the favorite, 9-5 favorite, Arrest Me Red, the number 5, and True Valor, the number 3, on the inside. But he goes by him pretty nicely when he gets some daylight there, and gets it done in the Jaipur for, as I say, Luis Saez, Bill Mott, Lee Einsiedler, Mike Francesa, part owner as well. And you would have to think we'll see Casa Creed, being a Lee Einsiedler horse, 4-star Dave. That's what they did last year, won the Jaipur and tried the 4-star Dave up at Saratoga, and wouldn't shock me at all to see that be the game plan again. And Casa Creed yesterday wasn't quite a lifetime best buyer, but it was a 102. And I'm just looking, it was his second lifetime best buyer, and his lifetime best was last year a 105 in the Jaipur. So he owns the race. Nice 102 buyer there again for Casa Creed in the Jaipur. And I'm just looking. I have a list here of the buyers. I was looking for Tribuvans, and it's not listed. All the other races have buyers, so I don't know. I'm gonna have to check and see why there wasn't a buyer for Tribuvan. But if I come up with that, I'll alert you. Maybe during one of the commercials, I'll see if one of the other sources has that one listed. But otherwise, I have pretty much all the buyers for the Belmont Stakes week stakes races. All right, let's go a little earlier on the card yesterday and take a look at the Brooklyn, a mile and a half. So you have the long-winded horses in here. I handicapped the race thinking, you know what? I think Fearless is just the classiest horse in the race, and the distance is going to be the question mark, but Fearless just might outclass them, and I think that's exactly what happened. Lone Rock, the number 1, is a marathon distance specialist and won this race to Brooklyn very easily last year. Warrant, I thought, was also very playable for Brad Cox, the number 3. But number 7, Fearless, when the running started, he does kind of outclass them, wins by almost 3 lengths. And you got $9 and change. Again, on a horse I thought outclassed them a little bit. And a big day for Pletcher and Rapoli. They get another one. Luis Saez gets it done. You can see a nice late run there from Warrant to get up to be second for Brad Cox and Flavian Prop, but no match for the winner. And as I say, I thought, to me, Fearless just had a little bit of an edge on the bunch class-wise, and that's the way it proved out. Distance wasn't really an obstacle there, and Fearless winds up with a nice little 95 buyer figure. Let's go a little bit earlier on the card as well and take a look at more from the Chad Brown, Peter Brandt juggernaut that played out over the week. And so somebody said the person at the track who's making the money is the guy who has to produce the Peter Brandt silks, because in the various races he would have a number of runners, and there was a picture in the paddock of 4 jocks with the green Peter Brandt silks. And most owners, I don't think, have that many versions of their silks floating around, but he needed them this week. But in the Just a Game, I like Regal Glory. Speak of the Devil wound up going off as the even money favorite. I thought Regal Glory, though, off the Jenny Wiley win last time, was going to be the Chad Brown, Peter Brandt runner to beat, and that's the way it turned out. And so we got a little bit more value. Speak of the Devil, who winds up disappointing, goes 4th. He's even money. Regal Glory, she goes off at 7-5 and wins pretty easily here in the stretch when they start the run, and Jose Ortiz gets that one going. Chart margin is over 3 lengths. Wakanaka second in Italian, also from Chad Brown and Peter Brandt, winds up 3rd. And as I say, Speak of the Devil, a little bit disappointing, running 4th in there after having gotten off a little bit slowly and just kind of never got into the race. But pretty good looking win for Regal Glory. Regal Glory with a solid 103 buyer in there. And finally, as I say, we'll look at some of the other Saturday stakes when we're joined by Mike MacAdam in a few, but to kind of kick off the stakes action on Saturday, it was the Acorn. Echo Zulu was a late scratch, a gate scratch, essentially. Joel Rosario said, she just wasn't warming up well. So that was a little bit shocking as they're out there, getting ready to start the race. All of a sudden, Echo Zulu is a scratch. I have subsequently read that Steve Asmussen said the horse was x-rayed. Those were negative, so we'll see what's up next for Echo Zulu. We hope the best for her. Hope to see her back. Once she scratched, it was Matarea. It was going to be fun to see those two match up. They just absolutely stood out from the field. But once Echo Zulu was scratched, Matarea just kind of had this at her mercy, and that, again, is the way it played out. Matarea, Brad Cox, Flavian Prat. She's going to be the number 4 horse here in yesterday's scratch-reduced 4-horse field in the Acorn. Chart margin's going to be over 6 lengths. She's going to pay $2.60. As a nice little up-and-coming 3-year-old filly for Brad Cox and Godolphin. Going to be interesting to see. I mean, so far, had a mile and a 16th race in the Alcibiades in the second start of her career last year as a 2-year-old. This year, it's been shorter distances. Did try a mile down at Oaklawn, but otherwise the last few races have been sprints at 7 furlongs. The Beaumont victory, the 8 bells at Churchill, now stretched out to a 1-turn mile at Belmont. We'll see what they do next with Matarea, but as I say, she has become a very interesting player on the 3-year-old scene for Brad Cox and Godolphin. All right, let's hit just quickly on some of the other races that played out over the last few days down at Belmont, because they will clearly, or have the potential to give us some runners to pay attention to up at Saratoga. And going back to Thursday, there was a couple of 2-year-old stakes that, again, will certainly offer up some potential runners at Saratoga to pay attention to. The Astoria was the 2-year-old fillies, and Devious Dame came in for Norm Cassie off a maiden-breaking debut down at Churchill, and Devious Dame, the number 6 horse, goes off at 2-5 and gets it done here. You can see in the lead is Alexis's Storm, who came in for Jim Lawrence off a debut win at Laurel. Nice second place finish, well clear of the others for that one, but Devious Dame winds up well clear of the second place finisher. Joel Rosario on board for Norm Cassie, now 2 for 2, and you'd have to think potentially that one shows up at Saratoga in the 2-year-old filly stakes. And on the 2-year-old boys side, I would think much the same for the winner there in the Tremont, the 2-year-old boys edition on Thursday. 2 of a Kind went out for Brian Lynch. Similar scenario to Devious Dame. Had won the career debut down at Churchill. Did it on Belmont Stakes week. Did it in fine fashion, winning off by daylight in a field of 8. Follows up in the Tremont on Saturday, and 2 of a Kind, the number 7 horse. Luis Saez on board. Going to wind up taking him pretty much all the way around. Wins by 2 lengths. Pays $6.50. Nonay Hudson for Wesley Ward off a career debut victory at Keeneland. The number 4 horse disappoints a little bit, fading to 4th. Put the Pass Behind runs 2nd. Valentin Day runs 3rd. Put the Pass Behind 24-1. A little bit of a surprise coming in from Laurel for a trainer that nobody was familiar with, not showing any stats, but completes the exacta as a 24-1 shot. So congratulations to those connections. But again, on the 2-year-old side, looking up to Saratoga, you would have to think with the Brian Lynch runner now 2 for 2 and a stakes victory, that potentially Sanford maybe, or some of the other 2-year-old stakes up at Saratoga for that one. And so, as I say, I think the 2-year-old winners to the stakes races on Thursday are potential, certainly highly potential to be seen up at Saratoga. On the boys' side, Two of a Kind, 76, Buyer, and Devious Dame winds up with a 69 Buyer figure. So, at this time of year for 2-year-olds, those are okay. They don't certainly jump off the page by any means. And I think we have seen some other debut runners within the last couple of weeks that have fired numbers that are maybe a little more promising than that. But when you're looking at the page, again, the Buyers are only a tool, and stakes winning experience counts for something as well. All right, let's go back to Friday and just quickly hit on a couple others before we take our break. As I say, the Peter Brandt Silks were out there getting it done successfully over the last few days, and that included Friday and the New York. Rozier, I was in here handicapping on Friday, and Rozier went up at 65 cents to the dollar, and I had Rozier on top, but I said the price, and a lot of people were really, really leaning on Rozier, and I said, boy, you can look at the rest of this field and kind of make the case that Rozier, I had it on top. I think Rozier deserved the edge, but Virginia Joy from Chad and Peter Brandt, Bleecker Street being undefeated from Chad and Peter Brandt, Family Way from Brendan Walsh. I thought those were all Chad and Peter Brandt also had Flighty Lady, but it winds up to be Bleecker Street staying undefeated. The number 5 horse, Family Way, the Brendan Walsh runner, winds up second at 10-1. Flighty Lady, one of the other Chad horses, winds up third at 51-1. Again, as I say, boxing up the Chads, you just missed a 5-2 over a 51-1 as the Brendan Walsh runner, as I say, Flighty Lady holds on there for second, but coming on the outside, Bleecker Street, Irod Ortiz gets it done. Rozier, the number 2 in there, again at 65 cents to the dollar, disappoints running 5th. And again, it just, as I say, I'm not breadboarding. I had Rozier on top, but as I talked about it, I said, people are just being a little too confident on Rozier in a race that I think had more talent than maybe they were giving credit for. Let's also take a look at the True North, because this was one of the big performances from the weekend. Oh, and Bleecker Street, a 96 Buyer for Bleecker Street in the New York. The True North, 4-year-old and up sprinters, and some folks were saying, why isn't Jackie's Warrior going in the Met Mile? I had no real argument with taking the shot here. But as it turned out, I wonder if they, I wonder if in the immediate aftermath they weren't saying, why didn't we take a shot at the Met Mile? Then maybe after the Met Mile, maybe they're saying, we were okay where we were yesterday. But Jackie's Warrior here in the True North. Baby Yoda's in the race. Mr. Phil, I thought, could be a little bit interesting. Sound money for Chad Brown and Klarovich. But Jackie's Warrior he just runs them off their feet. At 25 cents to the dollar, you got $2.50 back for the victory. It just kind of looks like making this kind of a laugher in here at 5 lengths. The victory to second. Again, sound money. It is Chad Brown and Klarovich running second. War Toxin runs third at 69-1 for Uriah St. Louis. But Jackie's Warrior gets it done, as I say, in fine fashion and at a short price. Joe Rosario, Steve Asmussen, and company, and he's phenomenal. Come back now as a 4-year-old. They came out of this, and subsequently Steve Asmussen was interviewed in the Winner's Circle, and he said, on to Saratoga, Vanderbilt, Forgo, Breeders' Cup. So we'll get to see Jackie's Warrior again up at Saratoga after he put on a couple of nice performances up there last year, winning the Amsterdam pretty easily, and then having that ding-dong battle with Life is Good in the Jerkins last year. He put on a couple of nice performances, including that Jerkins, which was one of the best races of the meet. But we'll get to see Jackie's Warrior again up at Saratoga this year, potentially 2 times. And another one that I think I would guess have the potential to see up at Saratoga with the very New York connections. Bella Sophia, and she was in the Bed of Roses back on Friday down at Belmont, and I went with obligatory because I thought she's just been fabulous this year. But we were in a 4-horse field in the Bed of Roses, and I was in here handicapping, I said, with a 4-horse field and with the speed of Bella Sophia, she just may, from a strategic standpoint, have these over a barrel a little bit, and that's exactly the way it played out. Bella Sophia's the number 3 horse. Luis Saez puts her on the lead, and she just takes them all the way around. I will say, obligatory makes it very interesting late. Obligatory is the number 1 horse. And right here, it looks like the race is over. And obligatory is trying, but again, with that speed advantage. And right here, you think it's definitely over. Obligatory is very classy, though, and despite the pace advantage, obligatory kind of makes this a little bit intriguing at the end. The chart margin winds up to be a half a length. Bella Sophia getting it done with a very solid 100 buyer figure. And I should have mentioned also Jackie's Warrior with a phenomenal 107. And as I say, I would think both of those will be showing up at Saratoga on big stakes days up there where we can enjoy. Again, both of them had great performances at Saratoga last year. Bella Sophia, Jackie's Warrior. Looking forward to more of the same this summer. All right, let's take a break. Speaking of Saratoga, my colleague in the press box during the meet up there, Mike MacAdam, will join us after this. He does great coverage of the Saratoga meet and horse racing in general and sports in general for the Daily Gazette, but he was down at Belmont yesterday, so we'll get some firsthand knowledge of what it was like there over the last few days and some of his thoughts on the stakes action from Belmont Stakes Week. All of that right after this. Stay tuned.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
Birdstone is an outside front. They're coming down to the finish. Can Smarty Jones hold on? Here comes Birdstone. Birdstone surges past. Birdstone wins the Belmont Stakes. In front, but here comes High Chaparral. High Chaparral with the defending champ to take it to Belmont. These two arch rivals head to head with Joe Hart bearing down on them. It's going to be a 3-horse photo finish to the top. Here's the winner. Photo finish.
What if there was a way to become a better horse player, to have a better knowledge of the game, to be more successful? What if there were a way to take what you've learned, what you know, and make better decisions, better choices? In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Sunday morning, the day after wrapping up Triple Crown 2022 Belmont Stakes. And as I said before the break, we are joined by sports columnist from the Daily Gazette and the horse racing writer for the Gazette, Mike MacAdam. He was down at Belmont yesterday. Mike, good morning.
Morning, Seth. How are you?
Very good. Happy to talk to you. And before we go to that, haven't had a chance to, go back 3 weeks and congratulate you on the award you got for covering the Preakness last year, and you were at the awards breakfast down at the Preakness, and so again, congratulations on that. And how was the breakfast?
It's the first time I've been to it, and I want to go back to it again, not necessarily trying to win another award, which was certainly a tremendous honor, and thank you for bringing that up. But the breakfast is kind of fun. I've been told by people who've been doing it for a long time that it's sort of evolved from what it used to be, where there was a lot of fun trash talking and stuff going on, but you still get some of the usual suspects like Dwayne Lucas showing up, and they give him the microphone, and that's always a good idea. So it's there's a ton of people there, and you see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of people you don't know, and to go there and have these very nice people give me an award for something I did work-wise, and I kind of accepted it on behalf of the Gazette because their commitment to racing coverage is pretty solid. But I would definitely go back to it just for the breakfast because they're serving black-eyed Susans in the morning, and you get to listen to Dwayne Lucas and Kenny McPeak and people like that. So that's always fun.
Yeah, I'd love to go down to it. It does sound like a lot of fun. And again, congratulations on the award. Another award on the mantle for you is you also won the Joe Hirsch Award for Belmont coverage and sports writing awards as well. So again, well deserved. And again, congratulations. Let's jump now to.
Thanks a million, sir.
Yeah, appreciate your work there with the Gazette, certainly. Let's jump to this weekend and talk a little bit about. You've been down there the last couple of years, right? COVID year and last year with the limited crowd. So 2 years ago, no crowd. Last year it was limited to 11,000. Yesterday they said 40-some thousand. I'm just, always curious now talking to people these big event days, how things have evolved over the past couple of years and what it was like this year as we're kind of climbing out of that COVID situation.
Yeah, and the last year, the situation with the 11 plus whatever it was, because they were still kind of transitioning out of the COVID protocols and everything, they did not sell general admission tickets so it was all reserved stuff. This year they opened it up, but of course they still have a cap at 50,000, which it was something that was in place before COVID hit. And I think it was more geared toward them the facility being able to handle like whatever finite number they chose, which was 50,000. They do the same thing at Saratoga. I think the number's 40 for that, for Travers and Whitney Day. So for 46,000 is close to what they were capping it at anyway. The crowd was very loud for the Belmont, and I think a lot of it was because they recognized the two Rapoli silks heading to the finish line, and of course one of them being a filly nest, which these crowds will always embrace just from the factor of the filly going against the males. So it got loud down there, like really loud, which was encouraging too, because I think somebody made the point when American Pharoah won the Triple Crown at Belmont in 2015. It was a different kind of sound because everybody was holding their phones up to film it, and there was no clapping. But yesterday it was sort of harkened back to the days when people really showed their emotion with their voices. During the stretch drive of a very good Belmont. Very fun to watch Belmont. I will say, as far as the crowd goes, this is the first time I've been. Like last year when I was there, UBS Arena, which is the new home of the New York Islanders, was still just an I-beam skeleton frame, and now it's a fully formed, functioning NHL arena. And they've also reconditioned the whole backyard, which got essentially chopped in half. Their picnic area that is comparable to the backyard at Saratoga. And excuse me, they renovated that all up, and they put food trucks, and there's all brand new picnic tables. They even got like some cornhole, whatever you call the things, the cornhole wooden structures that you can do the beanbag thing, and benches, and it's all kind of new. I mean, one thing that was rather jarring was there's all AstroTurf where there used to be grass in a lot of the places in the backyard. So that was kind of like, I'm kind of hoping that's temporary, but I tend to doubt that it is. So the backyard is all new. Everything's very organized. The parking, because they got a new parking deck with the UBS Arena. Hockey arena's right there, and just, it's sort of you knew where to go. So I thought the layout and everything is very fan friendly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, so I'm glad you brought that up, just because I haven't been down since the new arena's been there. So I was curious as to how that was all working out, and it's good to know that things are shaking out nicely there. All right, I watched the top of the show. I played the entire Belmont, but we're going to take a look at the stretch run here, and I'd just like your opinions. I took a stand against Rich Strike. Coming out of the Derby, I said, that's just fluky. I don't think he's going to win another major race. And then about the last week and a half, I started to get skeptical. Yeah, he's working okay. Maybe it's a horse who just got right at the right time. But I couldn't pull him in my mix yesterday. So my thought was kind of validated with his performance. And I played around with Creative Minister on top. But I said, not trying to red board, but just trying to look and learn for the future. I said when we watched the race earlier, once you kind of looked after knowing the results, Mo Donegal and Nest may have just been the classier horses that had the best resumes, with the Grade 1 Wood Memorial on the resume, and for Nest, the Grade 1 Ashland. Maybe it was kind of that easy. People liked We the People, but the buyer number may have been inflated by that off-track performance. And so, again, if you go back now and do a little reverse engineering, maybe it was as easy as just looking for the two best horses. What were your thoughts after yesterday's Belmont?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on Rich Strike. He was an easy toss for me. A big part of that was, besides the fact that he had everything, credit to Sonny Leon for working out the trip in the Derby.
Yeah.
But there's a big part of the pre-race analysis every year. I think Jerry Bailey jumps on this stump every year, is that if you're not riding at Belmont Park on a regular basis, the configuration of the track will throw a huge curveball not only to the horse, who isn't used to that big huge turn, but also the jockey, who just doesn't have the internal clock that's built for the Belmont main track. And so I was willing to easily toss Rich Strike out of there just because of the inexperience of the jockey. They didn't even bring him in to work horses like during the week. I think he might have had one mount on Friday, and it was on the turf. And then on Saturday, they were able to weasel the first race was 6 furlongs on the main track to give the kid at least one ride around that bend. But as Jerry Bailey astutely points out, usually if on a mile and an eighth track, which you're more used to riding on, when you get into the top of that second turn, your tendency is for your horse to go, for you to urge your horse to go a little bit and start your closing move. But if you do that at Belmont, you're doing it with 4.5 furlongs left instead of 3 furlongs left. So there's still a lot of racetrack besides the bend and whatever the stretch entails. So Rich Strike, I completely threw him out. I didn't make picks publicly in the paper, but if I had, I had sort of drank the We the People Kool-Aid off that Peter Pan, so I was going to put him on top and Mo Donegal second. Pletcher had mentioned, I think before the race even, that Mo Donegal has the fastest closing quarter of anybody in the field, so he told Irad to act like that, act like you have the horse who has the best closing quarter speed, and it worked out the way they game planned it perfectly, and good for them. It was fun to see the two Rapolis, because it means so much to that guy to win this race, but also Donegal as well. And we know a couple people. One more for me, because I met a guy in the paddock before the Met Mile who owned a piece of Mo Donegal through Donegal Racing. He's a Skidmore College grad who's friends with Ray Bryan, who I've written about a couple times, a guy named Ken Fryrich, and he's also a Skidmore grad. And so these are the kind of people you kind of like to see, because they're heavily invested in New York racing, and when they win, it means a lot to them.
Yeah, it was fun to see the winner's circle, Mike Rapoli, he got interviewed up in the stands after the race, and then they talked to Jerry Crawford of Donegal afterwards, and he kind of tipped the cap, as you say, to the partners and whatnot who have stuck along. And
right.
It's always very fun to see groups like that who, as you say, are so invested, like Mike Rapoli in New York racing. This is the race he wanted to win, so that added some nice. Yeah. And you kind of said it. It wasn't a star-studded Belmont Stakes this year, but it was a kind of a fun and interesting race, and I think that's the way it played out. And with the victory by Mo Donegal, I think it was kind of satisfying. But the bigger race, and I want to get to the Met Mile in a second, but now it's just dawned on me. I wanted to ask you a little earlier, and I'll toss it in here, because maybe you can talk about what the buzz was up in the press box for the Met Mile. But I was just curious, what was the press box like this week? Again, with the COVID situation and whatnot, the times I've been down at the Belmont, the press box has been jammed. I'm kind of over in like the side press box usually. But I'm just curious what it was like the past few days down there. And again, kind of tie in, we'll talk a little bit about the Met Mile. But as horse racing fans, and I wonder if the press people was the same, I think we might have been all more interested in the Met Mile.
Absolutely. And, actually he had written a lead, like an experimental lead, before most of the card was done, where I was kind of comparing the Belmont Stakes itself to the headlining comedian who, at the tail end of, several undercard or whatever you call the comedian, the warm-up guys who absolutely go out there and kill it, and then the headliner comedian is thinking, oh man, how am I supposed to follow that? And of course I wound up trashing that whole sentence, but that's kind of the writing process that worked. There was so much buzz about the Met Mile, but there was buzz about Jack Christopher coming back. I mean, even like Jackie's Warrior from the day before, there was so much other stuff that was drawing interest, and if they were standalone races by themselves on a card, would have just had tremendous amount of attention. The gentleman, Ken Fryrich, that I mentioned to you already, the Skidmore guy, the reason I talked to him before the Met Mile, and what a day this guy had, not only does he own a piece of Mo Donegal through Donegal Racing, but he owns a piece of Flightline through West Point. So I don't know if anybody had a better day than he did. And I talked to him in the paddock before the Met Mile, and he said, just very kind of quietly but confidently said, I think people are going to really see a monster performance out of this horse today. And it certainly lived up to everything he said. Total monster performance. Then you go back to Jack Christopher, who Mark Cassey said that's a huge freak right there. Go to the Ogden Phipps. A lot of people were looking forward to seeing that matchup between Latruska and Malathaat. And, that race certainly threw in its entertainment value for all to see. So, there's just like so much to like about the undercard.
We're watching. We're watching.
Race to watch.
Let me just jump in here. We're watching the Met Mile now, and we all saw the start where Flightline gets off to the bad start, and Junior Alvarado says, "Okay,
I'll Speaker's Corner too."
Yeah, I'll take Speaker's Corner out and make this a race. And Flightline just kind of edges up, and we're watching him kind of turn into the stretch here, and Flightline goes on by. And I when I handicapped the race, I thought, I want to go against Flightline because being old school, you come back against Speaker's Corner from a December layoff, but he just seemed like a freak. So I put him on top, but I said, I'm not arguing with anybody who's going with Speaker's Corner, but he kind of tears Speaker's Corner hard out. Speaker's Corner is going to wind up running third in here. Happy Saver gets up for second. But Flightline, and I'm just looking at my computer here, Flightline wound up with a 112 buyer yesterday.
112.
Continuing that triple-digit streak that he has had his entire career. And, just talk a little bit about what was the buzz after the race around the facility?
Freak, and, I mean, it not only you mentioned the 112 buyer, you mentioned that he won, pretty convincingly and everything, but you also throw in this happened at the beginning of the race, they threw this at me, California base coming cross country. There were so many other sort of ancillary factors that just added up to even better performance than a buyer figure can tell the story. The other thing was, of course, we're in the New York press box. You're like, too bad we're not going to see this horse again for a long time, or maybe ever, because he's he's pointing toward the Pacific Classic. So we're, highly doubtful he's going to wind up at Saratoga for anything like the Whitney. I don't know. I never say never, but because the Pacific Classic isn't until September 3rd. But I don't think that the chances are high that we're going to see him in there. But yeah, the buzz was. The thing is, everybody sort of knew how good the horse was ahead of time, so you weren't really surprised. But then you see the performance, and it's sort of more of an acknowledgement of, this justifies the belief everybody had in him beforehand, including my guy Ken, who again he had kind of a good. I tried to get a quote from him after the Belmont, and there was the massive crowd between the Donegal and the Rapoli people. And I finally gave up after 15 minutes. I just went upstairs. I wasn't even sure if he was in the middle of that thing. I got up to the press box and looked down. Yep, and there's his salmon-colored blazer was in the middle there. So he was still in there, but I had to bail.
Yeah, that was a good day. You're right. Does anybody have a better day than that? Buying into a couple of partnerships in those two horses. Yeesh. Let's. You mentioned it earlier. Let's take a look at the Phipps, and the storyline in the Phipps was, I guess, the performance by Latruska as the big favorite, winding up fifth in here. I put Latruska on top, but as I handicapped the race, I said I really have liked Clariere throughout her career. So the victory wasn't a surprise. I had used her in horizontal wagers, though. The $11 and change I thought was a surprise. I thought that was very generous. Mount at second, search results third. I would guess Fausto Gutierrez may have smoke coming out of his ears after watching search results go up and push Latruska.
I don't think he was the only one. I don't think he was the only one either, because I am not sure Chad Brown was 100% thrilled with the ride by Irad on search results. I kind of like search results a little bit. The line I put in my story recapping some of the undercard stuff was search results ran her eyeballs out. She ran Latruska into the ground, and she ran third. So I'm not sure Chad was 100%. Supporting the ride that Irad had, sort of being the sacrificial lamb that set it up for the other two. But the thing is, you can't take away from the two that wound up first and second, because those are two, outstanding horses. And this was one of those races where everybody was complaining ahead of time that, there's short fields and everything. And I'm looking at who's in these short fields, like, I have no problem with this. I don't need, like, 2 or 3 other ones that are going to wind up the track 20 lengths behind. I'm okay with these 5 right here, and it lived up to that. The other thing is, you mentioned, future Saratoga stuff. Let's get them all together again for the personal ensign eventually, which, is something that is likely to happen, unlike, whether we're going to see Flightline there or not. The older filly dirt horses, let's get this all-star team back together and do it all over again.
You mentioned, I said it yesterday, the same thing. There was consternation on social media over the past week of field size. The field,
right.
And I get the argument. It's not so attractive betting-wise, although I think there were some really nice for the Casa Creed race, the Manhattan. I think were betting events where you could spread around and maybe make the shorter fields into your horizontals. So I get the argument, though, but I'm with you. The other side of the argument was the quality of these fields. And the day was filled with some real titans. And let's go just to one more before we wrap things up. You talked about this also. Let's take a look at the Woody Stevens. And I think a lot of people kind of felt maybe going in, but now feel coming out that maybe the best 3-year-old on the card yesterday, and maybe the best 3-year-old overall, will turn out to be Jack Christopher. Winning here, chart margin is 10 lengths, and the buyer number for Jack Christopher, a 107. This was a laugher yesterday in the Stevens.
Well, that's the story that I wrote yesterday for today. It wasn't so much Belmont related as my story essentially is this is the best 3-year-old male in the dirt male in the country right now. I don't care if he hasn't run longer than a mile. I don't care if he missed all the Derby preps and the entire Triple Crown Trail, although he did run on Derby Day and Belmont Day. This is not only the best 3-year-old male in the country, but he is going to stretch out. I mean, they want to run him in the Haskell now. It's just that they were so behind the 8 balls trying to get him back to the track. As you well recall, he was the 9-5 morning line favorite for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He was going to be Chad's Derby horse this year and the whole bit. And then he had a little physical issue and was scratched the day before the Breeders' Cup, and they've been just salivating to get this horse back on the track. And then he showed what he could do in the Pat Day Mile on Derby Day, and then yesterday was one of the, as you mentioned, Titan performances. For me personally, I was looking forward to seeing him run almost as much as seeing Flightline. I think Flightline, there was a little more like mystery factor of like, is he for real kind of thing. Jack Christopher was sort of more like, yeah, let's see him validate what we think of him. And man, he sure did. And that was my story. Before the Belmont was even run, I told our friend Gene Kirshner, I said, well, I had said to him like an hour before that, I have no idea what I'm going to write about today. I have no idea. And then after Jack Christopher ran, I was like, okay, that makes it very simple. I'm just going to say he's the best 3-year-old male dirt horse in the country right now. I don't care if he didn't run in any of the Triple Crown races. So that was one of those that you're really looking forward to see, and the horse showed up and validated what you thought he was about.
Yeah, it was an interesting Triple Crown season, no doubt about it. I mean, the fluky result in the Derby and the undercard on Derby Day was solid, and then the Preakness.
Then the Derby winner coming back in the Belmont is weird, and yeah, and there's some strangeness.
Yeah, the early voting wins the Preakness, with a very savvy move by Chad and Klarovich to skip the Derby, and then the as you say, Derby winner comes back yesterday in the Belmont, and so we're still, I think, trying to sort out the 3-year-old picture, but the undercard yesterday maybe helped clarify that with Jack Christopher. It was kind of a fun 5 weeks. It was a little bit different, but it was a fun 5 weeks, not just on the 3-year-old side of things, but on amongst some of the other divisions too. And you would have to think, for us up here, playing, I think, nicely into Saratoga with, again, these 3-year-olds and some of the other divisions over the past 5 weeks as well, setting things up nicely for some of the stakes action up at Saratoga.
And we're gonna see a lot of these. I think the Travers could be bananas. I mean, I don't know if Jack Christopher would be able to run back there after running in the Haskell. Maybe not, but Epicenter, and Chad still has Zandon. We haven't mentioned him yet. Who duels Epicenter in the Preakness or in the Derby. So there's still a lot of stuff out there that did not run yesterday that, if they all come back for the Travers, maybe minus Jack Christopher, the Travers could be kind of bananas. I know the Mo Donegal people would love to win that. The Donegal people already won it with Keen Ice when he beat American Pharoah, and they would love to get that one again. The Travers. Pretty. Even if Jack Christopher, in my mind, is the best 3-year-old colt in the country, if he doesn't show up for the Travers, but everybody else does, I'll settle for that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Oh, and again, what was the press box like yesterday?
Yeah, it was sparsely populated, as you would expect. You mentioned some of the years you've been there, and I remember being stuck all the way down at the end where it's like where the kitchen is, yeah. And where there's like you got to keep the window open because it gets, get like sweltering hot down there. And then by the time you're filing your story at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, there's like mosquitoes the size of Rodan are flying around there. And so, yeah, it was a lot more subdued, like those back tables where they kind of set up there. Those were probably like not even half filled, but the main, press box table across the front of the window there, that was filled up. You saw a lot of the usual suspects, but there weren't a lot of people there that I didn't know. So that tells you something. And it's all proportional. It's reflective of decreasing coverage of the sport to some degree. Sports departments are a little smaller than they are nowadays, but it was still pretty good. But yeah, it was kind of proportional to the crowd that you see in the stands, which actually wasn't terrible. And when they cap it at 50,000, you're stuck at a finite number anyway, and the place is never going to be filled up. And that place is massive, so 46,000 at Belmont Park looks like maybe 15 at Saratoga. That's a sign of the times. That's okay. It was a pretty good crowd in the press box, but definitely not like in the olden days where you were on top of each other.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, it's just kind of reflective of the situation also yesterday, where the Belmont itself wasn't jumping off the page, so the mainstream media wasn't maybe juiced up. But on the horse racing side of things, we were all looking at that undercard and salivating, and had been for a few weeks, and it kind of lived up to it, certainly. But Mike, we appreciate your thoughts, having been live there yesterday, and kind of recapping the overall experience for us, and your thoughts on some of the stakes action. Again, I'll tell people to check out your work in the Daily Gazette, and certainly always look at that during the Saratoga meet, because you're up there in the press box regularly as well, and we appreciate your jumping in this morning. We'll talk again, probably up at Saratoga.
Thanks a million for having me on, Seth, and as always, I'll see you at Desperate Annie.
If you weren't throwing in the reference, I was going to get it in. I appreciate that, Mike.
Well, hey, between the two of us, we got those guys covered.
Absolutely, Mike. Appreciate the visit.
All right, thanks, Seth. See you around.
Mike MacAdam from the Daily Gazette, again, giving us a bird's eye view yesterday, and he's been there for the last few days down at the Belmont. You can catch his work, of course, in the Daily Gazette. All right, I'm going to wrap it up for Racing Across America for this Sunday morning, again, the day after, as we've wrapped up the Belmont Stakes. Now, I did have, just in case I had time for news and notes, and I do want to bring it up, do not forget Royal Ascot this week. It kicks off on Tuesday and runs through Saturday. Hey, I'm a homer. Saratoga's great. The number of stakes races, and you know, even with the 8 weeks, it's still kind of a boutique meet with high quality racing start to finish. But if you're talking a meet with quality start to finish crammed into, 5 days, and this is really, top quality racing. And we will have, of course, some American entrants. Wesley Ward is over there, and I think I have the article. Wesley Ward. And Irod Ortiz is going over to ride the Wesley Ward horses. And in fact, we will see Wesley Ward showing up on Tuesday, day one of Royal Ascot. Golden Pal will be in the Group 1 King's Stand on Tuesday. That's going to go off our time at about 10:40 on Tuesday morning. The Queen, I love this. You talk about just a high quality meet. It's 5 days. They kick it off. Race number 1, Group 1 Queen Anne Stakes. Let's kick things off with a Group 1, but it's just great group rated racing throughout. I think there's a Group 1 every day. And as I say, Wesley Ward has kind of made it in vogue, so there'll be American runners to root for. Bobby Flay was interviewed yesterday on the Belmont Stakes broadcast, and he was talking about being excited. He was bought in on We the People, and so excited, and had some friends over, had brunch, and then he came on the track, and a great day, and I'm excited. It's been tough to sleep, and I'm headed over to Royal Ascot with Pizza Bianca after this. So Bobby Flay will be over there with Pizza Bianca. And again, it's always kind of fun to root for the Americans over there. But overall, it's just a great, 5 days of racing, Tuesday through Saturday, Royal Ascot. So keep that in mind as well. The highest of quality for a 5-day period in the world in racing, I would say. All right. I'm going to wrap it up, but I'll be back in about an hour and a half or so with OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. Going to take a look at a little, I think the game plan today, Belmont certainly, and some Churchill and Monmouth, and Saratoga Harness, of course, has a Sunday program. So we'll have a lot of great action right here. Oh, I did also want to mention, and I think I have the note here, there's a... here we go. Santa Anita today. The Rainbow Six will be a... Oh, wait a minute. Now I'm taking that back. It's Gulfstream. Rainbow Six is going to have a mandatory pay today. And I'm just looking down to see exactly Rainbow Six to be paid. Pool might reach $4 million. large fields, ample turf action. We'll have to see what the weathers look like. But it's a mandatory pay today at Gulfstream. So it's Gulfstream today. Mandatory pay in the Rainbow Six. So keep that in mind. Gulfstream wagering includes a mandatory pay in the Rainbow Six. And I think there's also a mandatory pay in the Derby City Six, which incredible that this happens. They were touting that last week, and it hadn't been hit since Derby Day, and so the pool had gotten to about $250,000, and I think they're still planning the mandatory today, but it got hit on Thursday. You got to feel for the tracks who are kind of looking forward to that big day when the pool will balloon up, and it's fun for all of us to kind of jump in and maybe put a modest ticket together and hope for something. But it was the Derby City Six was hit on Thursday at Churchill for $369,000. Sequence was a $17 winner, $13 winner, a $67 winner, a $5 favorite, then $17, then a $4 favorite. So a couple of favorites and a couple of favorites and four kind of you had to search for type of horses, including the $67 winner. But somebody strung them all together and pulled down $369,000. So as I say, I still think at Churchill today, they're planning the mandatory pay in the Derby City Six, but the carryover, I think, is about $8,000. It's just incredible that could happen. Hadn't been hit for weeks and weeks. And then, hey, let's have a mandatory pay. Boom, a couple days before, somebody pulls down the whole pool. All right, I'm going to step out now. And again, be back in about an hour and a half or so with OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. I'm Seth Merrow. This has been Racing Across America as we wrap up Triple Crown season 2022. And now everybody's going to be talking Saratoga. But don't forget, there is plenty of good racing between now and Saratoga as well. Much of that will happen this afternoon, or some of that will happen this afternoon at least. And we'll be back in about an hour and a half or so with OTB Live. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.